When people think about museums, they imagine school trips, polished glass displays, and quiet halls filled with old bones and faded memories. But there's something they never talk about: the silence after closing hours. The kind of silence that doesn't just mean empty, but something waiting. Ethan didn't believe in ghosts, or curses, or anything beyond the visible world. He was just a night security guard trying to pay rent, walking the same marble halls every night at the city's oldest museum. The place had been standing since the early 1900s, built on top of what used to be a cemetery before the city expanded. Everyone who worked there joked about it, but Ethan never laughed. The museum felt alive, like the walls themselves listened. It started with little things: his flashlight flickering when he walked past the Hall of Masks, cold drafts from rooms sealed decades ago, motion sensors going off where there was no movement. But one night, October 12, 2018, the alarms didn't stop. The cameras caught shapes moving through the exhibits when no one was inside. He told himself it was a glitch, but as he sat in the control room, staring at screens full of static, he realized the shapes weren't human. The clock struck 12 a.m., and the lights dimmed automatically. The museum ran on a timer, and after midnight, only emergency power kept the halls glowing with a faint golden hue. Ethan checked his route: fossil wing, Egyptian exhibit, art restoration corridor, and finally, the Hall of Masks. Everything looked normal, but something in the air was heavier than usual. The kind of pressure that makes breathing harder, that makes the back of your neck itch like you're being watched. The fossil room was silent except for the hum of an old air vent. Dust floated like ash in his flashlight beam. The skeleton of the great Tyrannosaurus loomed above him, ribs like cages, eye sockets deep enough to swallow a man. For a second, he thought he saw something inside that skull, something dark and shifting, but when he blinked, it was gone. In the Egyptian exhibit, his radio crackled with static, followed by faint whispering, too soft to understand, too rhythmic to be random. He checked the comms, but the other guard, Raymond, didn't respond. The static twisted into words for a moment. "Stay after dark. You'll see us." His blood froze. He laughed nervously into the radio, said it was probably just interference, but part of him knew no signal sounded that alive. When he reached the Hall of Masks, he felt that same cold draft again. The hall was long, lined with glass cases that held ceremonial masks from around the world: African, Japanese, Native American, Mayan. But it was one in the center that always disturbed him. A human-sized mask carved from bone, its mouth stretched wide like a scream frozen in stone. It was said to be from an unknown tribe, found with no record, no history. The curators called it the Collector. Its eyes were hollow, but somehow they seemed to see. That night, Ethan noticed something off. The mask wasn't facing forward anymore. It had turned slightly, its hollow sockets now aimed at him. He stood there, frozen, the beam of his flashlight trembling. Then he heard a soft thud behind him. Tourne. Nothing was there. But when he looked back at the mask, the glass was fogged from the inside as if something had just breathed on it. I backed away, trying to radio in again. Still silence. He decided to head back to the control room, check the cameras. But when he looked at the hallway monitors, something made his stomach drop. The camera showed him standing in front of the Hall of Masks. Only he wasn't moving. The figure on the screen was completely still. But it wasn't quite him. The uniform looked darker, the face paler. Asewached, the version of himself on screen, slowly turned toward the camera, eyes black, mouth open in a soundless scream. The feed glitched and cut out. Ethan spun around. Nothing. Just the empty corridor. He took a shaky breath, muttered that he was done with this job after tonight, and started heading for the exit. But every hallway looked wrong now: too long, too narrow, bending where they shouldn't. The museum had changed its shape. The air grew colder the deeper he went, the marble floor beneath his boots echoing like distant thunder. His flashlight flickered, and for a heartbeat, the light caught something impossible. All the statues in the sculpture gallery had turned toward him, 100 stone faces staring in perfect silence. He whispered, "No, no, no." And Baghdad, but one of the statues, a Roman soldier missing an arm, had moved closer. He didn't see it move, but every time the light blinked, it was near. He bolted down another hallway, heart slamming in his chest, whispering a prayer he didn't believe in. The lights went out completely. Only the red glow of the exit sign pulsed faintly at the far end, like a heartbeat. He ran for it, but when he reached the door, the handle wouldn't budge. He pulled harder, slammed it, but it was as if the metal had melted shut. Behind him came the sound of marble grinding against marble, statues shifting, crawling. He turned and saw the silhouette of something tall emerging from the shadows, a shape wearing that bone mask from the hall. Ethos stumbled back, fumbling for his flashlight, and when he pointed it toward the figure, it was gone. The light cut through empty air. He heard a whisper behind him, close enough to feel its breath. "Stay after dark." He screamed and ran into the nearest corridor, straight into the archive section, a place he'd never been. Old documents lined the walls, some crumbling, others sealed in plastic, but one file drawer was open, marked Preservation Department. Inside were photos, grainy, black and white, of former guards. Some were smiling, some weren't. The last few photos were statues. Statues. Men and women mid-scream, faces twisted in terror. Each one labeled with a name and date. The most recent one read R. Foster, 2016. Raymond Foster. The other guard. Ethan dropped the photo and stumbled back as his radio hissed to life. A voice whispered, "Don't run. You're next." The floor beneath him shook. The lights above flickered violently, revealing fleeting glimpses of movement, hands pressing against glass, faces behind display cases, bodies shifting inside mummified wrappings. The exhibits were moving, the air filled with a low hum, like distant chanting. Ethan ran, barely able to breathe, sweat freezing on his neck. He tripped and fell in front of the dinosaur exhibit, the giant skeleton looming overhead like a god of bones. The eyes of the skull flickered with faint orange light. He didn't wait to see more. He crawled toward the staircase that led to the basement, a place staff weren't supposed to enter. As he descended, the noise faded behind him. The deeper he went, the older the walls became, turning from plaster to stone, rough and uneven. The lights didn't reach this far, only his weak flashlight cutting through the dark. The air was damp, filled with the smell of earth and old rot. He whispered, "Please let this be a way out." The basement opened into a massive chamber, something not marked on any blueprint he'd seen. It was a circular room lined with hundreds of statues, too detailed, too human. Some wore uniforms, some looked like terrified visitors, and in the center stood a massive figure draped in shadow, wearing the same bone mask, taller than any man, arms stretched as if welcoming him. Around its feet were tools, chisels, hammers. Bones turned to dust. Ethan's flashlight flickered one final time and went dead. Total darkness. Then, from everywhere and nowhere, came that whisper again. The collector keeps what it admires. He felt something cold touch his shoulder. He tried to scream, but his voice didn't come. He felt the cold creeping up his arm, his legs locking in place. He looked down and saw his skin turning pale, hard, like marble. His heart pounded slower, until it was gone. When the museum opened again days later, the staff noticed something new. In the Hall of Masks, there was a statue of a man in a security uniform, flashlight raised, expression frozen in silent horror. No one remembered ordering it, but the plaque beneath it simply read, E. Shaw, 2018. Visitors claimed that sometimes, when you stood too close, the statue's eyes moved. Others said they heard tapping from inside the marble, like something trying to get out. The museum was quietly shut down a year later due to structural instability, but locals still say lights flicker inside at night, and shadows move behind the windows. Some say the museum feeds on fear that those who stay after dark never really leave. They just join the collection. So if you ever pass by an old museum at midnight, and you see a single light on inside, don't look too long. And if you hear whispering through the glass, turn away, because some collections never end. They just keep growing, one scream at a time. And if you think this story will let you sleep tonight, think again, because the next time you glance at your reflection in a dark window, Take a closer look. Make sure it's still you looking back. Soft, static, echoing whisper fades in. Welcome to the collection.